morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Today, I'd like to take you down memory lane. For some of you who are not maybe familiar with the Zimbabwe history, the man in the picture there is the late Robert Gabriel Mugabe. This was a video taken, I'm not sure, I think it may have been just before the 1980 elections. And he was at his rhetorical best. Let's just listen to what he had to say.
We want full and unfettered democracy. Down with the racist constitution, down with the dirty elections. Pamberi nechimrenga.
I think now, with hindsight, we can rightly say that not every fist pumping nationalist demanding full and unfettered democracy is a Democrat. This, unfortunately, has been our case in Zimbabwe. Now, our yesterday's liberators have become the oppressors. The fist pumping, in fact, of Robert Mugabe did not in any way show his passion for democracy, unfettered democracy, free, fair, and credible elections. This was just a mercenary. Robert Mugabe and his fellow ZANU-PF thugs were not liberators at all. They were just fighting, mercenaries fighting for a reward. And as far as they were concerned, they wanted to rule Zimbabwe. They did, yes, they wanted to end white colonial oppression, but only to replace it with black oppression. They wanted to be the next oppressors. There's nothing democratic about that. When I saw the video, actually, it reminded me an article I read, written by Stuart Duran, and I think he summed it up beautifully. In the article, he says that the new regime can be viewed from different angles, but the nub of it is this. There is a recognition that the economic fiasco of the last 20 years was suboptimal, but Mnangagwa and his fellow travelers will burn the house down if they feel it necessary. Make no mistake, their will to power is every bit as intense as Mugabe's, as it is their belief that they own the country's juiciest fruit by right of conquest. There is no comprehending Zimbabwe without an appreciation of that mentality. Yet many failed to get it because they don't read the country's history. In 1979, at the height of the struggle against white rule, a diplomat who mixed frequently with Mugabe and other leaders of his party observed that ZANU-PF does not seem to attach much importance to the destruction caused by the prolonged war. They say they were content to see Zimbabwe totally demolished if that was the price to be paid for preventing others from ruling it. That attitude has not changed in iota. Notwithstanding the passage of 40 years and Mugabe's departure, after all, the men who now rule wielded his hatchets for most of that period. That's a tough task for some group of individuals who have shredded the country since 1980. A fraternity that will continue to loot, will continue to be twitchy about the merest hint of dissent, and will continue to patently despise the notion that it requires the consent of the people to govern. So all that fist pumping, we want a full and unfettered democracy, was just a show. ZANU-PF never really wanted a full and unfettered democracy, free, fair, and credible elections. Mugabe and company wanted absolute power. That is what they were after. And they were determined to get it. So determined, in fact, that for the 1980 elections, Mugabe and company, although they had agreed at the Lancaster House that they were going to withdraw all their operatives from the field in preparation for the elections, they left most of their operatives in the field. And during the campaign, they made it very clear that if ZANU-PF does not win the elections, the war would continue. And they made it abundantly clear to the electorate that that was their intention. Of course, the people voted to end the Bush War. Who could blame them? And if people thought, well, it's because they did not trust the whites, which was a sound argument. The British and the Rhodesians clearly did not want the ZANU-PF in power. And it is not beyond anyone's imagination that they would have rigged those election process in favor of P.F. Zapu or Musorewa or Ian Smith, or a combination of those three, just to keep ZANU-PF out. So their argument that they did not trust the whites to run a free, fair, and credible election in 1980 cannot be totally discounted. But what happened after they got into power in 1980? Within 3 years, Zimbabwe was to see some of the worst violence the country has ever seen, because that marked the beginning of the now infamous Gukurahundi. The principal purpose of Gukurahundi was to coerce then the late also Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his P.F. Zapu to give up their party and join ZANU-PF. And so the Gukurahundi war raged on until 1987, when finally Dr. Nkomo and company signed the Unity Accords, paving the way for the imposition of the de facto one-party state that has ruled Zimbabwe ever since. What is tragic about Zimbabwe is that this cycle of yesterday's liberators becoming today's oppressors has continued. We cannot deny that in the last 43 years, there have been many opportunities to implement the reforms to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The best opportunity actually came during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, when the late Morgan Changirai and his MDC friends had the opportunity to implement the reforms. SADC had created that opportunity. Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of office, the ministerial limousines, the generous salaries and allowances, and for the late Save himself, a US $4 million mansion in Highlands. There cannot be any denying that the opposition forgot all about the reforms. Throughout the 5 years, all the efforts made by SADC, notably Minister Lindiwe Zulu of South Africa, to coerce FDC to implement the reforms, fell on deaf ears. They had their snouts in the feeding trough, forget it. And the ZANU-PF cronies themselves even boasted of how much MDC they will never implement reforms. And so this is the cycle that Zimbabwe has had the misfortune about. The MDC, and now they've transformed themselves, most of them anyway, to Triple C, were elected by the people of Zimbabwe on the understanding that they will implement the democratic reforms designed to dismantle the ZANU-PF dictatorship. Alas, they failed to implement even one meaningful reform. Not even one meaningful reform, and hence we are in where we are now. So they did 23 years, 5 of which in the GNU, and they failed to implement even one token reform. And to make matters worse, they've given up on reforms. Now they're arguing that they can win rigged elections because they've devised strategies of winning rigged elections. All those strategies are, of course, all hot air. They knew that by participating in these flawed elections, they give ZANU-PF legitimacy, and in return, they get a few gravy train seats. As of Saturday, I think we can fairly say that the book has been closed on the 2023 elections. SADC is not going to do anything to bring ZANU-PF to book. While the SADC election observer team condemned the election as a farce, SADC heads of state have met and they've decided to take note of the report, but they've decided to do nothing else after that. And yesterday, I did play on this platform a video of ANC's Secretary General Fikile Mbolula saying that Zimbabwe is a sovereign nation and should be allowed to solve its own problems. I think coming from South Africa, and South Africa is the dominant country in SADC, I think we can take that as the final decision by SADC heads of state. As much as other SADC heads do not agree with it, they cannot do anything about it. And so I think we can safely say that probably is the end of the day. Now we have got to deal with the corrupt and tyrannical ZANU-PF dictatorship, assisted by Triple C, that was supposed to implement the reforms to end the dictatorship, but now are participating in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. We are well and truly stuck. There's no other way of putting it. We'll have to go back to the drawing board and think of how are we going to get out of this mess, because we are in a mess. And I cannot pretend that I've got solutions, or those are going to be easy solutions. But I think we've got to soldier on. As a nation, we have got to end this curse of rigged elections. We have Mugabe at the one end and this ZANU-PF rigging elections, and of course they maintain that the elections were free, fair, and credible. And then on the other hand, we have got Chamisa and this Triple C, who keep justifying participating in these flawed elections under the pretext that they have devised strategies of winning rigged elections. It's just a cover of their greed. The real reason why they're participating is greed. They know that ZANU-PF is offering a few seats, gravy train seats, for those who participate, and that's what they're after. We have got to be smart enough to realize this is an unworkable situation. The present situation is unworkable. We have got to go back to square one, where we demand democratic reforms so that every citizen has got a meaningful say in the country, in the governance of the country, through free, fair, and credible elections. That should not be negotiable. That should be our starting point. And we should not be fooled by fist-pumping thugs claiming that they want full and unfettered democracy, when all they want is to impose themselves. They have never held free, fair, and credible elections. Neither should we be fooled by those who claim that they are going to deliver change by winning rigged elections. That is an oxymoron in itself. If you're going to accept rigged elections, then you've given up the right to a meaningful, free, fair, and credible election. Every citizen should have that right. That should not be compromised. Are we trading in that right for the hope that we can devise ways of winning rigged elections? If you participate in rigged elections, you have given the process legitimacy. We cannot deny that by participating in these elections, we have given SADC the excuse to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy. That argument cannot be denied. We made it easy for SADC to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy. That is the truth. I think we need to be a lot smarter. The fight for free, fair, and credible election in Zimbabwe is as urgent now as it was before the country's independence in 1980. Because millions of ordinary Zimbabweans out there are yet to truly exercise what it means to have a free, fair, and credible election. We are still to hold our first free, fair, and credible election. Food for thought. Thank you very much for listening, and good day.